A fateful assignment. Captain Nora Vance stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy map. The ship hummed with quiet efficiency around her, the crew going about their duties with practiced ease. Nora had handpicked each member of her team for their skill, dedication, and unwavering courage in the face of the unknown. A chime sounded, indicating an incoming transmission from Terran Command. Nora straightened her uniform and stood at attention as the image of Admiral Graves appeared on the screen. Captain Vance, the Admiral, greeted her, his weathered face etched with concern. "I have a critical assignment for you and the Dauntless. We stand ready to serve." "Admiral," Nora replied, her voice steady and confident. Admiral Graves nodded, his expression grim. "You are to proceed immediately to the Maelstrom, the most dangerous and unstable region of the galaxy. Your mission is to patrol the area, maintain peace, and protect civilian ships from the myriad threats that lurk within." Nora felt a thrill of excitement tinged with apprehension. The Maelstrom was notorious throughout the galaxy, a vast expanse of space where the laws of physics seemed to bend and break at will. Strange anomalies, bizarre phenomena, and deadly cosmic storms wreaked havoc on any ship foolish enough to venture into its depths. It was also a haven for marauders, pirates, and rogue factions seeking to exploit the chaos for their own gain. "Understood, Admiral," Nora said, her mind already racing with the preparations that would need to be made. "What can you tell me about the current situation in the Maelstrom?" Admiral Graves sighed heavily, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his responsibilities. "It's worse than ever, Captain. The anomalies are growing more frequent and more intense. We've lost contact with several civilian ships that ventured too close to the edge of the Maelstrom, and there have been reports of increased pirate activity in the region." Nora nodded, her jaw set with determination. The Dauntless and her crew will do whatever it takes to bring order to the Maelstrom and protect those who cannot protect themselves. "I have no doubt of that, Captain," Admiral Graves said, a hint of pride in his voice. "But be careful out there. The Maelstrom is unpredictable, and even the most experienced crews can find themselves in over their heads." "We'll be vigilant, Admiral," Nora assured him. "The Dauntless is the most advanced ship in the fleet, and my crew is the best of the best. We'll get the job done." The Admiral nodded, his image flickering as the transmission began to break up. "Godspeed, Captain Vance. Terran Command out." As the screen went blank, Nora turned to face her crew, her eyes blazing with determination. "All right, people, you heard the Admiral. We have our orders. Set a course for the Maelstrom and prepare for anything. I want all systems checked and double-checked, and I want everyone at their best. We don't know what we're flying into, but we'll face it together." The crew responded with a chorus of "Aye, Captain," and set to work with renewed purpose. Nora felt a swell of pride as she watched them, knowing that she could trust each and every one of them with her life. As the Dauntless set out into the uncharted depths of the Maelstrom, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would be unlike any they had faced before. The unknown stretched out before them, vast and infinite, filled with dangers and wonders beyond imagination. But Nora knew that as long as the Dauntless and her crew stood together, they could face anything the universe threw at them. The journey ahead would test their courage, their skill, and their resolve. But Nora Vance and the crew of the Dauntless were ready for whatever lay ahead. They were the guardians of the Maelstrom, and they would not fail in their duty. In the depths of space, the Dauntless sailed onward into the heart of the Maelstrom, ready to face the challenges that awaited them. And though the path ahead was shrouded in mystery and danger, one thing was certain. The crew of the Dauntless would stop at nothing to protect the innocent and bring order to the chaos. For they were the best of the best, the brightest stars in the galaxy, and they would not be deterred. As the ship ventured deeper into the Maelstrom, strange readings began to flicker across the sensors. Anomalous energy signatures, gravitational distortions, and bizarre spatial phenomena that defied explanation. Nora knew that they were entering uncharted territory, a realm where the normal rules of the universe no longer applied. But the crew of the Dauntless were no strangers to the unknown. They had trained for this, honing their skills and knowledge to navigate the most treacherous corners of the galaxy. And with Nora at the helm, they knew that they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they pressed onward, the crew of the Dauntless steeled themselves for the trials to come. They checked and rechecked their systems, running diagnostics and simulations to prepare for every possible scenario. And through it all, Nora remained a beacon of strength and leadership, guiding her crew with unwavering resolve. The maelstrom loomed before them, a swirling vortex of chaos and danger. But the Dauntless and her crew stood ready, united in their purpose and determined to succeed. They were the guardians of order in a universe of chaos, and they would not rest until their mission was complete. So begins the tale of Captain Nora Vance and the crew of the Dauntless as they venture into the heart of the galaxy's most perilous frontier. What dangers and wonders await them in the depths of the maelstrom? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. The crew of the Dauntless will face whatever comes their way with courage, determination, and an unbreakable bond of unity. For they are the best of the best, the brightest hope in a galaxy of darkness, and they will not be defeated. Into the maelstrom. As the Dauntless crossed the threshold into the maelstrom, the ship shuddered and groaned as if in protest. The view screen flickered with an eerie, pulsing light, and the sensors went haywire, spitting out reams of incomprehensible data. Captain Nora Vance gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles turning white as she fought to maintain control of the ship. "Steady on," she called out to her crew, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. Stay focused and trust in your training." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmations, their hands flying across their consoles as they worked to stabilize the ship. Slowly, the Dauntless began to even out, the shuddering subsiding to a dull vibration that thrummed through the deck plates. "Report," Nora barked, her eyes scanning the readouts on the view screen. "All systems nominal, Captain," replied her first officer, a tall, lanky man named Jax. "But the sensors are still going crazy. It's like they can't make sense of what they're seeing." Nora nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Keep scanning. I want to know everything that's out there, no matter how strange or incomprehensible it may seem." As the Dauntless pushed deeper into the maelstrom, the view screen began to fill with a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes that defied explanation. Swirling vortexes of energy, shimmering curtains of light, and strange twisted forms that seemed to bend and warp the very fabric of space itself. It was a realm of chaos and madness, where the normal rules of the universe held no sway. And yet, amidst the insanity, there was a strange sort of beauty to it all. The colors were vivid and intense, the patterns intricate and mesmerizing. Nora found herself transfixed by the sight, her mind struggling to make sense of what she was seeing. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently to the side, throwing the crew from their seats. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed, bathing the bridge in an eerie red glow. "Report," Nora shouted, pulling herself back into her chair. "We're under attack," Jax yelled back, his fingers flying across his console. "Unknown vessel, bearing 175 Mark 20. They came out of nowhere. Nora's eyes narrowed, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the situation. Who would be foolish enough to attack a Terran ship in the middle of the maelstrom? And how had they managed to get so close without being detected? "Raise shields and charge weapons," she ordered, her voice calm and steady despite the chaos around her. "Helm, evasive maneuvers, get us some distance from that ship." The Dauntless shuddered as another barrage of weapons fire slammed into its shields, the energy discharge rippling across the view screen like a lightning storm. Nora gritted her teeth, her fingers tightening on the armrests of her chair. "Hail them," she said, her voice cold and hard. "I want to know who they are, and what they want." Jax nodded, his fingers already dancing across his console. A moment later, The view screen flickered and resolved into the image of a gaunt, pale-faced man with cold, dead eyes. He wore a black uniform with no insignia, and his expression was one of pure, unfiltered malevolence. "This is Captain Nora Vance of the Terran ship Dauntless," Nora said, her voice steady and commanding. "You have attacked a vessel of the Terran fleet without provocation. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." The man on the screen laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that sent shivers down Nora's spine. "Your threats are meaningless here, Captain," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "The Maelstrom belongs to us, and we will not tolerate any interference from the likes of you." Nora's eyes narrowed, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the man's words. Who was he, and what did he mean by us? She had never seen his uniform before, and his ship was unlike anything in the Terran fleet. "I don't know who you are," she said, her voice cold and hard. "But I will not allow you to threaten the safety of my crew or the innocent civilians we have sworn to protect. Stand down now, or we will destroy you." The man's eyes flashed with a malevolent light, and his lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You have no idea what you are dealing with, Captain," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "But you will learn soon enough." With that, the screen went blank, and the Dauntless shuddered under another barrage of weapons fire. Nora gripped the armrests of her chair, her mind racing as she tried to formulate a plan. "Tactical analysis," she barked, her eyes scanning the readouts on the view screen. "Their weapons are unlike anything we've seen before," Jax replied, his voice tight with tension. "Our shields are holding for now, but they won't last forever." Nora nodded, her jaw set with determination. "Then we'll have to take the fight to them," she said, her eyes flashing with a fierce light. "Helm, bring us about. Tactical, lock weapons on their engines and prepare to fire on my command." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmations, their hands flying across their consoles as they worked to carry out Nora's orders. The Dauntless swung around, its weapons arrays glowing with barely contained energy as they locked onto the enemy ship. "Fire," Nora said, her voice calm and steady. The Dauntless shuddered as its weapons discharged, the energy beams lancing out across the void and slamming into the enemy ship's shields. For a moment, the shields held, flickering and pulsing with an eerie light. But then, with a blinding flash, they collapsed, and the beams tore into the ship's hull, ripping it apart in a cascade of explosions. Nora watched as the enemy ship disintegrated, her heart pounding in her chest. They had won this battle, but she knew that it was only the beginning. The Maelstrom was a vast and dangerous place, and there would be many more challenges to come. But for now, the Dauntless and her crew had proven themselves equal to the task. They had faced their first trial and emerged victorious, their courage and determination unshakable in the face of the unknown. As the ship sailed onward into the depths of the Maelstrom, Nora knew that they would need every ounce of that courage and determination in the days to come. For the Maelstrom was a realm of chaos and madness, where danger lurked around every corner and the very fabric of reality seemed to unravel. But the crew of the Dauntless would not be deterred. They were the best of the best, the brightest stars in the galaxy, and they would stop at nothing to protect the innocent and bring order to the chaos. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united in their purpose and their resolve. And so the journey continued, the Dauntless sailing onward into the heart of the Maelstrom, ready to face whatever trials and dangers lay ahead. For they were the guardians of the galaxy, and they would not rest until their mission was complete. Unlikely allies. The Dauntless sailed deeper into the swirling chaos of the Maelstrom, its sensors straining to make sense of the anomalous readings that flickered across the screens. Captain Nora Vance sat in her chair, her eyes fixed on the view screen as she tried to anticipate what new challenges lay ahead. Suddenly, a shrill alarm pierced the air, and the tactical officer's voice rang out across the bridge. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal. It's weak, but it's definitely there." Nora's brow furrowed, and she leaned forward in her chair. "Source?" The tactical officer's fingers danced across his console, and a moment later, a shimmering hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. It was a ship, but unlike any Nora had ever seen before. Its hull was smooth and organic-looking, with strange, twisting protrusions that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "It's an alien vessel, Captain," the tactical officer said, his voice tinged with awe. "But it's badly damaged. Looks like it's been through one hell of a fight." Nora's mind raced as she considered her options. The Maelstrom was a dangerous place, and the alien ship could be a trap. But she also knew that the Dauntless had a duty to help those in need, no matter who they were. "Set a course for the distress signal," she said, her voice calm and steady, "and send a message to the alien ship. Let them know that we're on our way to assist them." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmations, and the Dauntless surged forward, its engines thrumming with power as it raced towards the stricken vessel. As they drew closer, the view screen filled with a clearer image of the alien ship. It was larger than the Dauntless, and its hull was pockmarked with scorch marks and gaping holes. Debris floated around it, glinting in the eerie light of the Maelstrom. "Hail them," Nora said, her eyes fixed on the view screen. A moment later, the screen flickered and resolved into the image of an alien being. It was humanoid in shape, but its skin was a deep, shimmering blue, and its eyes were large and almond-shaped. It wore a form-fitting suit of some kind, with strange, glowing symbols etched into the fabric. "This is Captain Nora Vance of the Terran ship Dauntless," Nora said, her voice calm and steady. "We received your distress signal and are here to assist you. What is the nature of your emergency?" The alien's eyes widened, and it spoke in a language that Nora had never heard before. The Dauntless's universal translator struggled to make sense of the alien's words, but after a moment, it managed to produce a rough translation. "We are the Vosari," the alien said, its voice tinged with desperation. "Our ship was attacked by pirates, and we have suffered heavy damage. Many of our crew are injured, and our life support systems are failing. We need your help." Nora's heart went out to the alien, and she nodded her head in understanding. "We will do everything in our power to assist you," she said. "Prepare to be boarded by our medical and engineering teams." The alien's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, Nora thought it might refuse. But then it nodded, and the screen went blank. Nora turned to her crew, her eyes blazing with determination. "You heard the Vosari. They need our help. I want medical and engineering teams ready to go in 5 minutes, and I want a security detail on standby, just in case." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmations, and Nora felt a swell of pride in her chest. They were the best of the best, and she knew that they would do everything in their power to help the Vosari. As the medical and engineering teams prepared to board the alien ship, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Maelstrom was a vast and dangerous place, and there was no telling what other challenges lay ahead. But she also knew that the Dauntless and her crew were up to the task. They had faced danger before, and they had always emerged victorious. And now, with the Vosari as their allies, they would be even stronger. The boarding teams made their way to the airlock, their equipment and supplies at the ready. Nora watched them go, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. The Maelstrom was a realm of chaos and danger, where the very fabric of reality seemed to unravel. But she also knew that the Dauntless and her crew would face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and determination. For they were the guardians of the galaxy, the brightest stars in the universe, and they would stop at nothing to protect the innocent and bring order to the chaos. As the airlock doors hissed open and the boarding teams stepped onto the alien ship, Nora felt a sense of purpose settle over her like a mantle. They were here to help those in need, to forge new alliances in the face of adversity. And together, they would face whatever trials and dangers lay ahead. For they were the crew of the Dauntless, and they would not be deterred. The Vosari ship loomed before them, a strange and alien vessel that seemed to defy the laws of physics. But Nora knew that appearances could be deceiving, and that beneath the alien exterior, the Vosari were not so different from them. They were all travelers in this vast and wondrous universe, all seeking to make their way through the chaos and the danger. And now fate had brought them together, two unlikely allies united in a common cause. As the boarding teams began their work, Nora watched from the bridge of the Dauntless, her heart swelling with pride and determination. They had a long road ahead of them, but she knew that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and resolve. For they were the guardians of the maelstrom, the brightest hope in a galaxy of darkness, and together they would bring order to the chaos and light to the shadows. Sanctuary. As the Dauntless's medical and engineering teams worked tirelessly to repair the damaged Vosari ship, Captain Nora Vance found herself face to face with the alien captain in the Dauntless's conference room. The Vosari captain, whose name was Zoran, was tall and slender, with shimmering blue skin and piercing violet eyes that seemed to see straight into Nora's soul. "Thank you for your assistance, Captain Vance," Zoran said, his voice deep and melodic. "Without your help, my crew and I would surely have perished in the maelstrom." Nora inclined her head, a gesture of respect and acknowledgement. "We are here to help those in need, Captain Zoran. It is our duty and our privilege." But even as she spoke the words, Nora could sense the tension in the room. The Vosari crew, though grateful for the Dauntless's assistance, seemed wary and distrustful. They kept to themselves, speaking in hushed tones and casting furtive glances at the human crew members. Nora couldn't blame them. The maelstrom was a dangerous place, and trust was a rare commodity in these troubled times. But she also knew that if they were to survive the challenges ahead, they would need to work together. "Captain Zoran," she said, leaning forward in her chair, "I understand that your ship is badly damaged and that repairs will take some time. In the meantime, I would like to offer you and your crew sanctuary aboard the Dauntless." Zoran's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, Nora thought he might refuse. But then he nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Thank you, Captain Vance. We accept your offer with gratitude." And so, the Vosari crew began to integrate with the Dauntless's crew, working side by side to repair the damaged ship and prepare for the challenges ahead. But even as they worked together, tensions began to rise. The Vosari were a proud and ancient race, with a rich history and a deep sense of tradition. They had their own way of doing things, and they often clashed with the more free-spirited and individualistic human crew members. Nora found herself constantly mediating disputes and trying to find common ground between the two groups. It was a delicate balancing act, and she knew that one wrong move could send the whole fragile alliance crumbling. But even as she worked to maintain the peace, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. There were whispers among the crew, rumors of strange behavior and unexplained incidents. And then, one day, a shocking discovery was made. One of the Vosari crew members, a young male named Tarek, was found tampering with the Dauntless's systems. He had been trying to access sensitive information and sabotage key systems, and when confronted, he had attacked the human crew members who discovered him. Nora was stunned by the revelation, and she knew that she had to act quickly to prevent the situation from escalating. She called an emergency meeting with Captain Zoran and the senior members of both crews. "Captain Zoran," she said, her voice tight with anger and betrayal, "one of your crew members has been caught attempting to sabotage the Dauntless. What do you have to say about this?" Zoran's face was a mask of shock and disbelief. "Captain Vance, I assure you that I had no knowledge of this. Tarek's actions are a betrayal of everything we stand for." But even as he spoke the words, Nora could sense the unease and suspicion rippling through the room. The human crew members were eyeing the Vosari with distrust, and the Vosari were closing ranks, their faces hard and unyielding. Nora knew that she had to act quickly to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. She ordered Tarek to be placed under guard, and she tasked her security team with conducting a thorough investigation into his actions. But even as the investigation proceeded, the Dauntless was suddenly rocked by a massive explosion. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed as the ship shuddered and groaned under the impact. Nora raced to the bridge, her heart pounding in her chest. "Report," she barked, her eyes scanning the readouts on the view screen. "We're under attack, Captain," the tactical officer shouted over the din of the alarms. "Multiple hostiles, closing fast." Nora's eyes narrowed, and she slammed her fist on the armrest of her chair. "Battle stations," she roared, her voice cutting through the chaos. "All hands to battle stations." The Dauntless's crew scrambled to their positions, racing to man the ship's weapons and defenses. The Vosari crew, too, took up positions alongside their human counterparts, their faces grim and determined. As the attackers closed in, Nora couldn't help but wonder if this was somehow connected to Tarek's betrayal. Had he been working with these marauders all along? Or was this just another danger of the Maelstrom, another challenge to be faced and overcome? But there was no time for such questions now. The Dauntless was in the fight of its life, and Nora knew that they would need every ounce of skill and courage to emerge victorious. She looked around at her crew, at the brave men and women who had sworn to follow her into the unknown. And she looked at the Vosari, at these proud and ancient warriors who had become their unlikely allies. Together, they would stand against the darkness. Together, they would fight for the light. And together, they would emerge victorious, or perish in the attempt. The Dauntless shuddered under another barrage of weapons fire, and Nora gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles turning white with the force of her grip. But even in the midst of the chaos and the danger, she felt a sense of purpose, a sense of destiny. They were the guardians of the Maelstrom, the defenders of the innocent, and they would not fail in their duty. The Relic. The battle raged around the Dauntless, the ship's shields flaring and pulsing as they absorbed the brutal onslaught of the Marauders' weapons. Captain Nora Vance stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes flashing with determination as she barked orders to her crew. "Evasive maneuvers," she shouted, her voice cutting through the din of the alarms and the roar of the explosions. "Keep those shields up and return fire." The Dauntless's weapons blazed to life, lancing out into the void and tearing into the hulls of the Marauder ships. The Vosari crew, too, fought alongside their human allies, their strange and powerful weapons adding to the Dauntless's formidable arsenal. But even as they fought, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Marauders were too well coordinated, too precise in their attacks. It was as if they knew exactly where to strike, exactly how to exploit the Dauntless's weaknesses. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the attack ceased. The Marauder ships broke off and flowed into the swirling chaos of the Maelstrom, leaving the Dauntless battered but unbroken. Nora sagged back in her chair, her heart pounding in her chest. "Stand down from battle stations," she said, her voice hoarse and strained. "Damage report." The crew scrambled to assess the ship's condition, running diagnostics and checking systems. The Dauntless had taken a beating, but she was still in one piece. "Captain," the sensor officer called out, her voice tight with excitement. "I'm picking up a strange reading on the long-range scanners. It looks like some kind of derelict ship." Nora frowned, leaning forward in her chair to study the readouts. The derelict was ancient, its hull pitted and scarred by countless years of exposure to the ravages of the Maelstrom. But there was something about it that caught Nora's eye, something that made her heart skip a beat. "Set a course for that derelict," she said, her voice steady and calm. "I want to take a closer look." As the Dauntless approached the derelict, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something momentous. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen before, its hull composed of a strange, shimmering metal that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Captain," the tactical officer called out, his voice tight with tension. "I'm picking up some kind of energy reading from inside the derelict. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Nora's heart raced as she stared at the readouts. The energy reading was off the charts, a pulsing, writhing mass of power that seemed to defy all known laws of physics. "Assemble an away team," she said, her voice steady and calm. "I want to know what's inside that ship." The away team, composed of both human and Vosari crew members, boarded the derelict with trepidation. The ship was a maze of twisting corridors and cavernous chambers, its walls etched with strange, alien symbols that seemed to glow with an eerie, pulsating light. And then, at the very heart of the ship, they found it. A vast, circular chamber, its walls lined with pulsing, glowing runes. And at the center of the chamber, hovering in midair, was a strange and wondrous artifact. It was a sphere, no larger than a human fist, but it pulsed with an inner light that seemed to draw the eye and ensnare the senses. It was beautiful and terrible all at once, a thing of power and mystery that defied all understanding. "What is it?" one of the Vosari crew members whispered, his voice hushed with awe. "I don't know," Nora replied, her eyes fixed on the artifact. "But I intend to find out." Suddenly, the chamber was rocked by a massive explosion. The away team was thrown to the ground as alarms blared and warning lights flashed. And then, through the smoke and the chaos, a figure emerged. It was Tarek, the Vosari saboteur who had betrayed them. His eyes were wild, and his face was twisted with madness as he staggered towards the artifact, his hands outstretched. "The power," he babbled, his voice cracking with strain. "The power will be mine." Nora leaped to her feet, her hand flying to her sidearm. But before she could draw her weapon, Tarek was upon the artifact, his fingers closing around its glowing surface. There was a blinding flash of light, a roar of energy that shook the very foundations of the ship. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. Tarek was gone, vaporized by the artifact's power. And in his place, hovering in midair, was the sphere itself, pulsing with an even brighter light than before. Nora stared at the artifact, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just witnessed. The power contained within that small, innocuous sphere was beyond anything she had ever imagined. In the wrong hands, it could bring untold destruction and chaos to the galaxy. But in the right hands, it could be a force for good, a tool to bring order and stability to the maelstrom. Nora knew that she had a choice to make, a decision that would shape the fate of the galaxy itself. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above the surface of the artifact. And then, with a deep breath and a silent prayer, she made her choice. The artifact pulsed once, twice, and then began to glow with a steady, unwavering light. Nora felt its power coursing through her, a rush of energy that made her feel invincible, unstoppable. She turned to face her crew, her eyes blazing with a fierce, determined light. "We have a new mission," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "We will bring order to the maelstrom, and we will use this artifact to do it." The crew nodded, their faces grim and resolute. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they also knew that they had the power to make a difference, to shape the destiny of the galaxy itself. And so, with the artifact in hand and a new sense of purpose burning in their hearts, the crew of the Dauntless set out to face the challenges of the maelstrom head-on. They were the guardians of the galaxy, the defenders of the innocent, and they would not rest until their mission was complete. Betrayal. The Dauntless sailed through the swirling chaos of the maelstrom, the artifact pulsing with an eerie, otherworldly light at the heart of the ship. Captain Nora Vance stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as she studied the readouts and scans of the strange and wondrous device. She knew that the artifact was a game-changer, a tool of unimaginable power that could tip the balance of the galaxy itself. But she also knew that such power came with a price, and that there would be those who would stop at nothing to claim it for themselves. As if on cue, the ship's alarms began to blare, warning of an incoming transmission. Nora frowned, her hand hovering over the comms panel as she hesitated, unsure of what to expect. "Captain," the comms officer called out, her voice tight with tension. "The transmission is coming from within the ship. It's on a secure channel, but the encryption is unlike anything I've ever seen before." Nora's frown deepened, and she felt a chill run down her spine. "Put it through," she said, her voice steady and calm. The view screen flickered and resolved into the image of a figure cloaked in shadow, its face obscured by a dark hood. "Captain Vance," the figure said, its voice distorted and inhuman. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Nora's eyes narrowed, and she felt a surge of anger and defiance rising within her. "I don't know who you are," she said, her voice cold and hard. "But the artifact is not yours to claim. It belongs to the people of the galaxy, to those who would use its power for good." The figure laughed, a harsh and grating sound that sent shivers down Nora's spine. "You are a fool, Captain Vance," it said, its voice dripping with contempt. "The artifact belongs to those who have the strength to wield it, to those who are willing to do whatever it takes to claim its power." Suddenly, the ship was rocked by a massive explosion, alarms blaring and warning lights flashing as the crew scrambled to assess the damage. Nora gripped the arms of her chair, her eyes widening in horror as she realized the terrible truth. "We have a traitor on board," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone has betrayed us." As if on cue, the doors to the bridge slid open, and a figure stepped through, a blaster leveled at Nora's head. It was Jax, her trusted first officer, his face twisted with madness, and his eyes blazing with a fevered light. "The artifact is mine," he snarled, his voice cracking with strain. "I have served the masters of the Maelstrom for years, waiting for this moment. And now, with the power of the artifact at my command, I will rule the galaxy itself." Nora stared at Jax in disbelief, her heart pounding in her chest as she tried to make sense of the betrayal. How could she have been so blind, so foolish? How could she have trusted this man, this traitor who had been plotting against her all along? But even as the shock and the pain threatened to overwhelm her, Nora knew that she had to act. With a lightning-fast movement, she dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast from Jax's weapon as it sizzled past her head. The bridge erupted into chaos, the crew scrambling for cover as Jax opened fire, his blaster spitting death and destruction. Nora rolled to her feet, her own weapon in hand as she returned fire, her shots bouncing off Jax's personal shield as he advanced on her, his face twisted with madness. But even as they fought, the ship was rocked by another explosion, the deck lurching beneath their feet as alarms blared and warning lights flashed. Nora knew that they were running out of time, that the Dauntless was on the verge of destruction. And then, just as all seemed lost, a figure burst onto the bridge, a blaster in each hand as it opened fire on Jax. It was Zoran, the Vosari captain, his face grim and determined as he fought to protect his unlikely ally. Together, Nora and Zoran drove Jax back, their weapons blazing as they forced him to retreat. But even as they fought, Jax managed to activate a hidden control on his wrist, and the artifact began to pulse with an even brighter light, its power building to a crescendo. With a final, desperate lunge, Zoran threw himself at Jax, his blaster forgotten as he grappled with the traitor hand-to-hand. The two men tumbled to the deck, locked in a deadly embrace as they struggled for control of the artifact. And then, with a blinding flash of light and a roar of energy, the artifact detonated, engulfing Jax and Zoran in a maelstrom of swirling, chaotic power. Nora watched in horror as the two men were consumed by the artifact's fury, their bodies disintegrating into nothingness as the power of the maelstrom claimed them. When the light faded, the artifact was gone, and Jax and Zoran with it. Nora sagged back against the wall, her heart heavy with grief and loss. Zoran had sacrificed himself to save her, to stop Jax from unleashing the artifact's power on the galaxy. And now she was alone, the weight of the maelstrom pressing down on her like a physical force. But even as the grief threatened to overwhelm her, Nora knew that she could not give up. The Dauntless was still in danger, and the crew needed her now more than ever. With a deep breath and a silent prayer for strength, she pushed herself to her feet, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For she was Captain Nora Vance, the guardian of the maelstrom and the defender of the innocent. And no matter what trials and tribulations she faced, she would not rest until her mission was complete, and the galaxy was safe once more. The Guardians. In the aftermath of the betrayal and the destruction of the artifact, Captain Nora Vance found herself adrift in a sea of grief and uncertainty. The loss of Zoran, her unlikely ally and friend, weighed heavily on her heart, and the knowledge that one of her own crew had betrayed her left her reeling with shock and disbelief. But even as she struggled to come to terms with all that had happened, Nora knew that she could not afford to wallow in her sorrow. The maelstrom was still a dangerous and unpredictable place, and the crew of the Dauntless needed her leadership now more than ever. With a heavy heart and a steely resolve, Nora threw herself into the task of rebuilding and fortifying the Dauntless. She worked tirelessly alongside her crew, repairing the damage wrought by Jax's betrayal and the artifact's destruction, and implementing new security measures to prevent such a catastrophe from happening again. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, word of the Dauntless's actions began to spread throughout the maelstrom. Tales of Nora's bravery and leadership, of the crew's skill and determination in the face of overwhelming odds, began to circulate among the various factions and races that called the maelstrom home. And slowly but surely, a new alliance began to form. Ships and crews from all corners of the maelstrom began to rally to the Dauntless's cause, drawn by the promise of a brighter future and the hope of a new era of peace and unity. Among the first to join the alliance were the Vosari, still reeling from the loss of their captain, but determined to honor his memory by fighting alongside their human allies. Other races soon followed suit, putting aside their differences and their ancient grudges in the face of a common threat. As the alliance grew in strength and numbers, Nora found herself at the center of a new and powerful force for good in the maelstrom. She worked tirelessly to forge bonds of trust and cooperation between the various factions, using her skills as a leader and a diplomat to bring them together under a common banner. And when the time came for the alliance to face its greatest challenge yet, Nora was ready. A massive fleet of marauders and rogue factions had gathered on the edge of the maelstrom, intent on plundering its riches and enslaving its people. But Nora and her allies were not about to let that happen. With the Dauntless at the head of the fleet, they met the enemy head-on, engaging them in a fierce and desperate battle that raged across the length and breadth of the maelstrom. The fighting was intense and brutal, with losses on both sides. But in the end, the alliance emerged victorious, thanks in no small part to Nora's brilliant strategy and the bravery and skill of her crew. As the last of the enemy ships fled into the depths of the maelstrom, Nora stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as she watched the alliance ships return to their homes, battered but unbroken. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be many more challenges and trials to come. But she also knew that the alliance was stronger than ever, united in its purpose and its resolve to bring peace and order to the maelstrom. And as she looked out at the stars, at the vast and wondrous expanse of the galaxy stretched out before her, Nora felt a sense of hope and purpose that she had never known before. She knew that she and her crew had a new mission, a new calling that would guide them through whatever lay ahead. They were the guardians of the maelstrom, the protectors of the innocent and the defenders of the weak. And no matter what challenges they faced, no matter what dangers lay in wait, they would not rest until their mission was complete and the galaxy was safe once more. As the Dauntless sailed off into the unknown, its engines thrumming with power and its crew ready for whatever lay ahead, Nora knew that she had found her true calling at last. She was a leader, a warrior, and a guardian, and she would stop at nothing to protect those who needed her most. And so, the legend of Captain Nora Vance and the crew of the Dauntless spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring hope and courage in the hearts of all who heard it. They were the brightest stars in the night sky, the guiding lights that would lead the way to a better tomorrow. And though the road ahead was long and fraught with danger, Nora knew that as long as she had her crew by her side and the stars to guide her, there was nothing they could not achieve. for they were the guardians of the maelstrom, and they would not rest until their mission was complete.